Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Sci-Fi Chronicles, where today we are going to take you straight into it, but we are going to be talking about Dalek Invasion of Earth. So we've got with us again today, these are my partners in crime. We've got Retro Doc Gary Akers. You doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah. Yes, I am.
Just ticking along, okay? Yeah.
I rewatched it last night. I'm still kind of overwhelmed. That's why I'm still kind of.
You're in shock, are you?
I'm still heartbroken. That's right. That's why I'm having to get my thoughts together.
Yeah.
No spoilers at this point, though.
Well, no, I was heartbroken for the Slither. That's what I'm.
Of course, not.
Yeah. Right. And as you can see from his name,
that's right.
Justice
could even
for
a
the
companion,
Slither.
I'm sure, like Bilal.
There should have been. I'm amazed there wasn't like a disclaimer at the end. No real Slithers were harmed during the filming of this episode.
As an animal lover myself, I agree to that sentiment definitely.
What we'll do at the end as well is we'll just put in like just a shot of Shooty with tears, just as almost like like Wayne's World with the Indian man crying at pollution. He'll be crying,
or just a picture of the Slither, R.I.P. Slither. What 1964 to 21.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Stay down the mine. And also with us today is the legend Paul Murray. Welcome back, sir. How you doing? You all right?
Yes, I'm a legend of my own lunchtime. That's right.
Absolutely.
I'm fine. I'm fine. Nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, I don't know why I introduce you to, because you're always blooming well here anyway, so it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, we want our own little spotlight. Don't begrudge us our own little spotlight moment, John.
Divas, everybody.
And who are you again? What's your name? Sorry,
yeah. My name is John Yulden, and I am God.
John. This is today is John's tribute to 1970s CSO.
Yeah,
as you can tell, as parts of him.
Look at that.
As parts of him vanish periodically throughout the recording.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we're going to talk about this one and have a lot of fun discussing it. But Dalek Invasion of Earth. What can I say? It's an absolute cracker. It's good fun, this one. So as we normally do, just sort of moving around. So Gary, what do you think about this story?
Well, I mean, it's obviously, I think one of the true early epics of Doctor Who. I think just as I think Marco Polo was probably the epic story of the first season. This is the epic story of the entire second season. Not
the Web Planet then.
No. Web Planet, I would say, I would maybe give an award for the most ambitious story, and not in a sarcastic sense. I mean that sincerely. But I mean, in terms of scale, with On Location, if you've been watching, along with the rest of us, all these stories sequentially, all of the location shooting in this story immediately vaults this story into a whole other level, because Doctor Who had in no way done, except for a few, cutaway shots, maybe in the Reign of Terror, long shots but just the sheer amount of location filming just sets this apart instantaneously, and puts this story like on a whole other level that the previous stories had not been on.
Yep, absolutely, top drawer. And Paul?
Well, I would agree. I mean, I think it's an epic story. I think some of it, the ambition is really good in relation to the story. But I think some of the ambition doesn't quite come off for me, but we'll delve more into that as we go on. But I agree with Guy about the location works really, really well. One thing about the location work that disappoints a little bit is all the publicity for this show, like the Radio Times cover and all the shots of the Daleks on Westminster Bridge, don't really come across that well in the actual episodes. But the bits where they go around Trafalgar Square and the Albert Memorial, where like the Daleks are on holiday, that bit works really, really well.
Yeah, they all kind of swarm together. It's like, okay, well, let's meet back at the cafe in 2 hours. Okay,
they missed a great shot of the Daleks on the London tour bus. That would have been quite fun, going around stopping, eating ice cream and things like that. But they didn't do that.
With a robo man driving the bus. Yeah.
going into the shop. Where are your postcards?
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I love this story. I think there's bits of it that I think are very slow and they drag a little bit, that they could have probably chopped bits down to it. But again, it's, you know, I've always thought really that the Daleks is a great story, but this is really what sent the Daleks into a whole new level for me, because it's just, you know, they were ruthless in the first one, but they're really ruthless in this one.
This story is very bleak, which I like. I like bleak Doctor Who. Maybe it's my dark side of my personality. I love dark stories, and this is really bleak. There's not a lot of hope in it, to be honest.
He's like the Master, isn't he?
Say that again, sorry.
You're like the Master. I'm
like the Master. That's why I've got this beard. Yeah. But it's quite dark. I like dark stories. I love Legopolis, for instance. I love that kind of macabre, kind of dark, melancholic stuff. I love all that. But the first episode of this is superb. Terry Nation's very good at setting things up. Yeah. And it sets up really, really well. And the iconic cliffhanger of part one is really, really strong. Works really well. Why the Daleks having a swim, I've no idea, but that's another story. But
well, I mean, when it starts off, you know, having, you know, when it says like World's End is the name of and then it starts off with the Roboman killing himself and you don't, that's like, talking about bleak. That is a very bleak scene. Yeah. And then it's weird because the location scenes, I think, are really, really well directed and really well, you know, framed and mounted. But especially at the beginning, then you have this really intense scene with the Roboman, and then it cuts to this really oddly shot thing of Hartnell fiddling around in the TARDIS, you know, with the pipe shots or whatever.
And he's in his element there, isn't he?
Yeah. But I mean, one thing, since Paul mentioned it, not that I'm a marketing expert, but were I a marketer, I would have put that the Daleks are back cover on week 2 to preserve the surprise of the thing. And then the next issue of the Radio Times, you have the splash of the Daleks are back. I don't know why they didn't do that. It seems fairly obvious to me.
I suppose it's just, but it's like modern Who, isn't it? It's like they leak things to almost like they don't think they get the viewers unless they leak it out, and it's a shame because you're right, that would have worked so much better, wouldn't it?
It would, but what they've started here, they started in the Daleks as well. This end of episode cliffhanger, the Dalek appearing. I know the Daleks aren't in the title of either stories, but they started that thing about the Daleks are in the story. It's called Something of the Daleks, but we won't show the Daleks at the end of part 1. You know they're coming. It's a great moment, but when are they coming? You know,
tell us.
Yeah.
Inform us. What are they going to do? Where are they?
They could have called it like pool time of the Daleks, you know, since it was underwater, whatever it was.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, maybe that's what that
recreational
later
the
scene.
Daleks it should have been called. Yes,
that's
right.
Like that later scene then when they're going across together and they've got their, you know, their plungers out.
Yeah,
they're all going. We're off to the sea.
Beach party of the Daleks.
I agree. I mean, the way this episode starts it is superb. I do think in the TARDIS, you know, Hartnell, he's just. We've talked about it before. He's in his element now, and the way he fiddles with the TARDIS console, you can see he's enjoying it.
What has gone wrong?
Yeah, exactly. And he does that. He does that wonderful shot to the camera again where he turns and faces the camera in the TARDIS console room for a few seconds, and then they all come in. But it's very, very well done. But when you talk about the Roboman scene is very, very effective. And you were talking about it, Paul, about the fact that they set up the story really well, and you know they're very good at doing these sort of things. But it's where you've had the Roboman, but you also have the sign. It's forbidden to dump bodies into the river, you know, and that is straight away before they've even stepped out of the TARDIS. You're saying you're knowing that, right? Okay, this isn't quite right. I do laugh though, where it takes them a while.
Yes, I was just going to say
they're not in their own time, and they're not sure everything's right with the fact that. Hang on, there's a big sign right behind you, basically saying "Don't dump bodies in the river."
I think the first episode. I think you know mentally. I think I was yelling at the screen more times in the first episode than I ever have for a Doctor Who. It's like every 2 minutes I'm going, turn around, look at the sign, or you know, there's shots of of Ian standing there, and then you can see the sign just through the little underway. You can already see the sign there, and you're like going, turn around, look at the sign, it's right there, you know, for 25 minutes. It's like, oh.
Do you know what I would also say as well? And look, this is a story, spoilers ahead, but you know, where we say goodbye to Susan, but all credit to Susan. Oh, no. Yeah. But all credit to Susan. She manages to get in one final act of stupidity before she goes, and that is, that completely unstable load of metal. I'm going to try and climb up it and have a view and see where we are.
See, I couldn't figure that out. It seems like she was just climbing over like a retaining wall with some weeds and stuff in it. And I'm like, how did her falling off the wall over there cause this entire building to collapse on the TARDIS? It's like, okay.
What is not clear about this story, which gets me every time I watch it, you see the desk calendar says 2164, right? So we're assuming that's the last time they were able to make calendars. Because
yes.
When the Daleks are invading, make some more calendars before they arrive. Okay, what year is it now? So they kind of they have to be so that it must have been. It's well after 2164, surely, to make it work. So if the Daleks have been bombarding the city, then the bombardment would have caused possibly the bridge to collapse or be damaged, or it's just been decayed through time. So how long has it been? From 2164 to where they are now. What time do you think?
And in the movie was 21. Was it
2150?
50. Yeah.
Well, I think in the story, I think they say when they're talking to one of them, and they said that the meteors came a decade ago. So I'm sure they say 10 years. And first of all, it was the meteors that the Daleks bombarded the planet with. They didn't know it was the Daleks at that time. Then came the plague that they sent down onto the Earth. And then obviously, again, it just shows, if you're a kid watching it at the time, when he talks about as well about, they say the whole Earth smelt like death because of all the rotting bodies, basically, which is quite strong for a kid at that time.
You think you notice that when you step out the TARDIS as well. What's that bomb?
Yeah, exactly. In the river.
The protons are always noticing that kind of thing,
and the river smells as well.
John, to me, I think that's just kind of a subtle, the program makers like subtle tribute to British ingenuity. Like, not even meteor bombardments and plague will prevent us from getting our calendars out on time.
Yeah.
You can imagine.
I think that says a lot for the British people.
You can imagine this dying, plague suffering man, just with his final death throw, he reaches across with his arm and presses the printing press, so a new run of calendars gets printed.
Or maybe you know what? Maybe that was just a company that basically produced calendars years ahead of time. So it was producing. It was actually the meteor bombardment started in like 2140, but they'd already produced the calendars up through like 20.
And what are the odds of the Doctor and Ian discovering that factory that makes those desk calendars?
Exactly.
That's right.
And you look in the boxes, and they've actually got a specific one, like with artwork, and it's like January. Get your January calendar with the asteroid or meteor hitting the Earth image. It's for February.
If this had been Batman 66, that would have been the Gotham Calendar Manufacturers Inc.
Yeah. Abandoned place. Yeah. So.
And I think
that's the old Gotham Calendar Manufacturer warehouse.
Yeah. And I have to say, is the Doctor finally? He's had enough of Susan. He does want to get rid of her because you need a jolly good smack bottom.
Well, she did deserve a jolly good smack.
Well, he really wanted
stupid. Really,
John. He really wanted to say that to Barbara, but since this is a kids' show, you really couldn't get away with that.
No, so. And do you know what? Do you know what I find strange in this first story as well? We've established that Susan is 16 years of age, but as the Doctor and Ian go off to find an acetylene torch to try and cut through all the scraps of metal that have come down in front of the TARDIS, Ian rubs her hair on top of her head, almost like she's a dog or a 6-year-old.
Or like she's 8. Yeah.
And it's very, very peculiar. But
that's the thing about
he's
Susan.
just trying to comfort her, isn't he? Though he just don't listen to the old bastard, basically.
I'm going to kick him down a flight of stairs when we go in that factory.
And again, and we have to take a moment to pay tribute to Susan's sprained ankle. The fact that this is the story, I think, that establishes the fast healing powers of Gallifreyans, because 2 episodes later, which is probably maybe about hours later in the story continuity, she's running around just like in
she's full pace at that point. Yeah, she really is. And again, here we have another example of where they've written in they can't get back in the TARDIS. It's blocked off from them, so they've done it again. Which is very good. They have no choice but to go out and go on a search. So
shouldn't there have been a line though? I mean, if they would have done that was an opportunity for a little inner stories continuity when they look at the big girder blocking. Ian could have looked at the Doctor and go, well, at least the lock's still there.
Yeah, exactly.
Could have been a, call out.
At least it's not a force field around at this time.
That's right.
Do you know what? When I look at this though as well, and I compare it to New Who, look, this is before the sonic screwdriver, right? If it was New Who, you'd have the Doctor going, well, setting 407,
I'll just move
cut through metal. Yeah, exactly. Which I like this, because it's like, well, they're having to sort of find a way of fixing it for themselves. But there are some great bits in this beginning, because you have what I like, and I've banged on about it previously in our reviews. They actually check the readings before they go outside in this one. They do it. They're learning. We've got to season 2. They're learning at this point. Will that continue? You'll have to find out, viewers, next time. But
and I don't know. I mean, I was also kind of I was looking at the way the girder fell.
Yeah.
And there was that thing, and I thought, well, surely there's enough room to crawl up there and maybe take your hand with the key and kind of get the key in, open both doors, and then the 4 of them can crawl through.
Yeah.
Into.
But don't you remember that bit of dialogue in the Daleks, Gary, about there's so many different ways of trying the key. So you have to be very careful you don't melt the lock. That could happen.
Right.
So
very good.
Pay attention, for goodness sake.
All right, no, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
Look, Gary. Look, you were up till 4 a.m. watching this. You should have at least paid attention, even though you were fighting.
I'll give you some slack. All right. Okay, that's
after the Slither died, I was so distraught that I wasn't really paying attention to the last couple of episodes.
Besides,
John's going to run a helpline to call for the Slither any minute now.
Another thing, and I know we're talking still about the establishment of the story.
Yeah.
One thing, though, that really, and it took me really up until, I guess, I know we're skipping around, but I used the 5th episode where they encountered the 2 women who turn out to be the informers for the Daleks. And there's that one line about, I remember the moving walkways in this, except for that single line of dialogue. There's absolutely nothing in this story that makes it appear that this could have taken place, this could have taken place as if you're a young 1964 viewer watching this.
65, 66.
Except for that one line of dialogue, there's nothing in terms of, other dialogue or what you see around that, this story could take place like the day after tomorrow. You see what I mean?
Agree.
It's like there's no sop in the story to this taking place 200 years after the current day viewers are watching it, except for that single line of dialogue. This could be the Dalek invasion happened in 1967.
You've not got people in silver suits wandering around or futuristic buildings in the background. None of that. No, it's not like the shape of things to come.
And it is clever. I mean, like from a world building perspective, because I always thought when I first watched it, and every time I watch it, I think about that, and I think it does sound very, very futuristic, almost, jokingly like a bit of Jetsons, that kind of moving ways and all of that. But
they've suggested that there's a heliport. The heliport at Chelsea is another kind of hint at the fact that it's gone up a gear a little bit.
And also there's the comment, where have you been? Have you been on the moon base or something like that. They say as well. So there's that. But I also think, and every time I watch it, I always think this is two elements to it, really. The first one is the reason Daleks did the bombardment with meteors and with the plague is because if they went head on to attack the Earth, it would have been a strong force to take down at the time. That's what I always thought. And the other thing I love about it is, and they don't do this enough now, that shows the patience and the scheming of Daleks. They're not in a rush. They've got a plan, you know. Let's drive humanity's numbers down so low that they aren't going to be able to be a viable resistance against us. And I think that's very well done. I think just touching back on a couple of things as well, like in the initial setup, I do like the set. I really do like the set where, you know, it's forbidden to dump bodies in the river and all that. It looks wonderful. I really think they've done a fantastic job there. But I was also going to say, I really like the interaction early on with Ian and the doctor being impressed about how Ian is deducing things. And, you know, there's that, that works superbly well.
Although I have to say, though, we talked about the doctor mellowing a bit after Edge of Destruction. He's quite grumpy in this. And I love that line he says, careful, doctor, I'm not a half-wit. You know, and they
exactly.
All that kind of stuff is brilliant. You know?
You know, I gotta say that scene, and that one quick scene is where I really started, where the power of the location filming struck me, which then played out over the course of the whole story. But just the way that was angled, where the camera was, Richard Martin was great at the location shooting, knowing how to frame
some of it, yes.
Because the camera's down here and it's almost at an angle as they go up the stairs.
Yeah.
And for some reason, as I was watching that, I was flashing on one of the Quatermass, you know, stories, maybe from the second serial, where the guy's coming down the stairs and stuff. And so I was flashing on other images like that, science fiction images like that I'd seen just from that simple shot of them going up the stairs, because we had not seen a location shot of the doctor and anybody else just going up the stairs before. So it struck me.
I think also, you know, when I'm talking about the deduction, I like the fact where you have it, where they find the body of the Robo-Man and they're doing the deduction on the house. Nasty. It is, isn't it? Yeah. And you see the handle sticking out and it's gone right in. And I think, and they're making a deduction, they're deducing about, you know, and trying to theorize about, right, what does this helmet do? And this is from its time where they're basically going, they say, it could be a mobile communications device, you know. That is a period of its time where they're saying it could be a mobile communications device, which wasn't around at the time, as we know. But they're intelligent enough, the writers, to put that in, you know, from their imaginations and what they're thinking at the time. But now, if you did the story now, that scene wouldn't play as well, because they would just go, oh, well, it's probably the same as our mobiles or something like that, you know.
And I hope, and I realize, I hope that everybody, you know, is appreciating the fact that John and I, this is our tribute to the Roboman here today. You know, so I hope that everybody appreciates that.
I feel left out now.
Please watch.
Too many in working party. Stuff like that. Yes.
Like, share, and subscribe.
I have to say that the bit that makes me laugh, Tom and Roman, is when they have the testing oral control. It's like Pharaoh all over again. Testing oral control. Testing oral control.
That's right.
Some of it,
But see that shows that it's taken place a couple of 100 years in the future, because they don't have to use handkerchiefs anymore.
Yeah. You can imagine the Dalek though has got a handkerchief over its
that's right.
I do also, you know, I actually love the scene where you've got, you know, Barbara Chase trying to catch up with them, like across the city, and you've got the drum sounds. You know, I think that's done very, very well. And, you know, she's trying to hide but catch up at the same time, and then someone catches her when she goes up against the rails in panic, and you don't know who it is at that point, do you? I think that's very well done. And I will say this, when Ian and the Doctor look up and see the Dalek saucer, I love the updated one they did on the DVD. I think it looks so much better, and it just
the original looks like an old Frey Bentos pipe.
It does.
Or a of a wheel trim of a car going past.
Absolutely. I just think it works really well with the story, and that saucer landing is good. But I do like, again, you've got that deduction from Ian where he's talking with the Doctor. They're both deducing what's going on, and Ian sort of says, "Bring out your dead," and the Doctor's like, "Oh, what?"
And I do, another thing that I thought was striking, because we've been watching these in fairly close order, the fact that 2 stories before on the view screen, if it looks remotely like Earth, they're like, "Oh, we're back," and the Doctor's going, "Oh, let me drop you off. We got things to do. Boom, we're here." And yet this time it's like, are we even in the same time? Is this really Earth?
Yeah.
We don't hear any of the normal sounds. What's going on? It seems like they've gone from what admittedly was kind of like a dim-witted assumption, back in Reign of Terror. And this is much more makes sense. It's like,
absolutely.
Let's check it 10 different ways before we assume anything.
What I really liked about it was when they did arrive, that the Doctor admits they got there by luck rather than judgment. Because normally, if anyone suggests he wasn't controlling it properly,
he flips
they're in
out.
Trouble. So he admitted it himself, which was a nice
very well
relationship
done.
quality,
I think also, certainly with season 2 so far, you kind of get that sense, and they kind of, Ian and Barbara joked at the beginning of Reign in Terror, well, I think he actually tried to get us back this time. There's that mellowing of the relationship where I actually think Barbara and Ian are just resolved to enjoying the adventure now. They want to get home, but they're kind of like, well, we might as well make the most of it,
Because when you get later on to the chase, they have the same kind of dilemma. They're not sure if they really want to go by that point, and they may for much longer,
Exactly. And I think with regards to, jumping back to Barbara when she's at the river, it's a really creepy shot again, and they do it so good at building the world up, where you just see the Roboman's body float to the surface in the river.
Yeah.
And she sees it, and then, off she goes. But that is done so well. I think, but a creepy thing for me, I still think that would have scared kids at the time, and I think is done really effectively, is the Robomen surrounding the Doctor and Ian. I think when you see him, first of all, they set it up where you see him, by the river in the background, and there's 2 of them, I think, and they're stood there. They do that to kind of introduce that, and you've got David kind of trying to alert them from above, and he's like, "Oh, I'm too late," and then they're completely surrounded, and then Ian goes to try and speak to them, and he lifts the whip, doesn't he?
What I really like about the Robomen in this one compared to the movie, I love the movie, don't get me wrong, but I think the zombie quality of the Robomen in this works so much better.
Absolutely.
They're much scarier in this than they are.
Well, plus, and we're gonna, the movie will come up from time to time, basically, because I adore the movie too. I think the movie I think does some things better in terms of the staging of some of the scenes. We'll get to that. But the one thing that the movie does, and I get it because it has to be a widescreen, it has to be filmatic, cinematic, is the fact that all the Robomen are dressed in the kind of comic booky black, vinyl, soldiery.
It's like the Daleks have made it corporate.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Whereas here, it's just they're just robotized in whatever rags that they happen to have on at the time.
Exactly,
which makes more sense.
And I think also I always laugh because what you were saying there as well, Paul, about the Robomen are more zombie-like in this story, which I really prefer. And I wish that we would see Robomen again. I'm amazed we've not seen them, in the show since, really.
I'm surprised they didn't do it in Daleks in Manhattan, because that would have worked so well.
Exactly. And I think what I always laugh about with this in the movie, when the classic example, and I love the movie to bits, but that bit where in the base at the mine, that one Roboman gets pushed down the shaft by the Dalek, and you hear him go,
yeah.
He should have been. He should have yelled. He should have yelled. I regret nothing.
Family friendly.
Yeah.
It loses that tension when if it's Larry and Phil in the mine
Yeah.
when he's trying to get talk his brother round and try and get him to reconnect, and then he kills him with a machine gun. That is so harrowing.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
played and so upsetting. Yeah.
That's what this they should have done in the original. They should have had the eating scene with the this missed a good
they missed a gag, didn't they?
It missed a good Roboman cafeteria scene in this story. That's what it needed.
And like you said, Paul, a few minutes back, the Dalek, that iconic scene of the Dalek just coming out of the water where they go to make a run to jump in the river, is just it's superb, isn't it? It really is.
It's an iconic cliffhanger, it really is. It works so well. It works so much better than the coughing and spluttering Dalek from the chase. But it's a great moment. Yeah.
And it's funny, imagine how frustrated all the kids would have been back then, because Radio Times trumpeted all the Daleks appearing, and then the one Dalek shows up for 5 seconds and it says, next week, the Daleks. And you're just
salt into the wound as well.
Do you know what I love? And this is fantastic. And I've said this before, I said this on, when we did the review of the censor rights. The Doctor at that point, he sees something's not quite right, and he's like, no, let's get back in the TARDIS and go, right?
Yeah.
And he's now got to the point where he's like, he wants to get involved and make a difference. And when the Dalek appears, and he basically...
He stands up to them. Yeah.
He does, and he says, not for long, when the Dalek says they're the masters of Earth. Yeah. And when the Dalek says you will die, I love it when the Doctor says, and who are you to condemn us to death? Very, very well played by Hartnell. It's so good. And then I love how he turns to Ian and he quietly says, we must pit our wits against them and defeat them.
Yeah.
And then the Dalek hears him whispering, and the Dalek fantastically says that he's heard that kind of talk. Mm-hmm. They've heard that kind of talk many a time from various people on the Earth,
something
or
just
elsewhere.
Something just popped into my head. I want to see what you two think about this, because the first episode obviously is just the kind of setup and disorientation, confusion, what's going on. And of course, we all love, the poster. How differently would this first episode have played out if that poster would not have been there?
Well,
the poster alerts the audience that something is wrong. Obviously, it's not our correct time. It's not there's why would you have bodies in the river?
Yeah.
All you would have is the Roboman, and you wouldn't know what that is yet. You would have the calendar 2164.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have the Dalek yet. But I'm wondering if that poster was removed, if that would have kind of, for the audience, increased the sense of, disorientation, confusion, wondering what's going on. And you know what I mean?
I think you said, Guy, though, unless you hadn't bought that week's edition of the Radio Times, you would know what was going on.
Yeah. I always think the trouble you got with it, I think, if they took that sign out, I mean, that's great for establishing.
Of course, absolutely.
Like as we know, and I think if they'd taken that out, I think they would have had to write further dialogue, like where you're talking about, Gary, with the deductions about what's going on, to get to something where that poster literally does that in just one image,
right? Yeah.
And it's a classic show don't tell kind of situation, isn't it?
Do you think now? Do you think that the calendar factory that they were in, do you think they also manufactured the sign? Because somebody had to manufacture and print those signs.
Yeah.
I wonder if that was a good cottage industry during the meteor bombardment, was the printing of signs about don't dump bodies in the river.
Yeah.
A bit like PPE rather in COVID, people jumped on and bang to make things.
Yeah. That's right. We have takeout, takeout here.
Yeah. I get as well that for me, that always in my head, and I don't know if you guys are the same with it, but that always built into my mind that was when there was still effectively a regional government that are still hanging on, trying to keep control of civilization. And they're saying, right, don't dump bodies in the river. But then you get that point where it's beyond that and it's just everyone for themselves. And it's funny, I always link it a bit with Day of the Daleks, where they talk about, they're describing what happens, and they're saying people are living in holes in the ground. And I always think this is exactly what would happen in this time scale. And you're walking across land and you're just going to find bodies that are unburied, all over the place.
To Paul's point earlier, they could have easily brought the Robomen back in Day of the Daleks too.
Yeah.
I mean, even with the
Ogrons, I have to say.
Yeah, even with the Ogrons, the Ogrons would be the brute force. The Robomen would be the more.
Well, you can have the guard officers,
force.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that. And they're due a comeback, but
they kind of did it in remembrance with the headmaster. He's got like a thing on his neck. It was very much similar kind of idea, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good.
But see, now, John, I don't know if you'll agree with me. Now, all the Robomen in current day, all the Robomen are behind the scenes, not in front of the camera. So, just my opinion, everybody. Yeah. Just my opinion.
Yeah. Exactly.
Don't cancel me.
Yeah. And this era, the current era, would have Cybermen that are just walking around in pants and a helmet on. That's it. Yeah. I mean, so what I do laugh at as well is the Dalek really rubs it in as well. We are the masters of Earth, and comes right up to the character after saying it about 15 times, and we're like, we get it. You've taken over our planet.
There's a lot of the whole Nazi, the Fourth Reich analogy, which was obviously far more allegorical in the first story, is blatant now. I mean, the Daleks are running around in the control room and talking about the final solution, which struck me. I thought, really? There's a scene where all the eye stalks kind of go up in like the Nazi salute and everything. And I thought they're being much more front burner about that now in this story.
Well, just even that, when they go, we talked about earlier, when they go around the sites in London and they're by the Albert Memorial, and they're putting their plunger arms up like that nasty salute, so it's kind of it's really on the nose, isn't it? Without a doubt.
And it's like they're dancing to fame or something like that.
Well, that little touch where they've kind of defaced the monuments with that little symbol, I thought was very subtle but very kind of effective. That you would have, kind of groups like that would want to go and deface the institutions of who they've conquered.
I think, as we said already, the world building in this works really, really well. And I think more so from the characters rather than the Daleks' point of view, I think they sell it really well, and the grimness of what the Daleks have done, like Jack Craddock talking about the backstory of how it all happened, and then the old lady and our daughter in the house working for the Daleks, all that kind of stuff. There's lots of, and then the man who's the Spiv character who gives them food and all that in the mine. There's lots of lovely world building, and it shows you how much the Daleks have done and how awful things are.
I mean, the black marketeer, which shows that it's not just when Earth is conquered, it's not like everybody bravely bands together into one dedicated group of freedom fighters. A lot of people are going to be out for themselves, like the black marketeer. You've got to pay with jewels or gold or whatever. I thought, well, what good are jewels going to do you, dude? What do you need jewels for now? But whatever. And then the women who are, mending clothes. It's like it also brings out people's worst natures too, not just their nobility.
Survival at all costs.
Yeah. But I think the point I was trying to make was, because they sell it so well, it makes the Daleks even more of a threat. I think the Daleks in this story, they look great, but I think there are a lot of elements that make them really weak. But I think the human characters make them stronger, if that makes sense. The way they sell it.
Yeah. I think also, I mean, this story, and we've touched upon it already, about how creepy and how ruthless it is in this story, because you even have that scene outside the Dalek saucer where that pretty blonde girl is outside of the saucer, and the Robomen just, you don't know if he's killed her or just knocked her out cold. I think it's implied he's killed her. Because he just literally.
Well, because I mean, they vaporize, like the one guy who escapes. I don't know if this is episode 3 or 4, where he's like halfway down the little opening to escape,
That's Baker, I think his name was.
No. Baker's the one that after they've just said goodbye and given him a little bit of supplies, he's walking. I'm talking the one guy, the nameless extra, who is going through the little hole, trying to escape through the hole in the floor, and about halfway through, and then gets blasted, so doesn't make it. Yeah, there's lots of.
Yeah.
Well, like Baker as well. The Baker, that bit's quite nasty too. He's like, you think he's going to get away, and then he puts his hands up to surrender, then you just kill him. It's really nasty.
Yeah, it is really, and I think I will say the external saucer set looks great for me. That looks brilliant. For its time, I think it does. They've done a fantastic job there, and I like the interior as well.
Let's talk about, what did you guys think about the whole sequence with the attack on the saucer? I'm kind of mixed, but what did you?
I'm mixed as well, because I've said this before. I'm not a massive fan of Richard Martin as a director. Now, I think agreeing with what Guy said about the location work, some of that works, some of it doesn't. But I think partly because it isn't that well directed, that's why that scene doesn't work so well. I think it's the way it's shot, particularly. It's a bit bitty, a bit disorganized, a bit not really well choreographed. That's part of the problem. So some of the shots of the Daleks are great, but then there's lots of boom shots coming in, and floor managers standing about them on the camera and things like that. And people are not being meant to be there. So I think it's not well shot, and they didn't have time to edit it. That's why I think a lot of stuff that Richard Martin has done, like some bits in the Web Planet, the fantastic shots of the Monopter flying round on the cubby, was superb. Some of it's really good if he's got time to do it. But some of it just seemed really, really rushed at times. If you understand that,
I was okay with it. I think I do like the little touches where you've got Barbara and the rebels. They're sort of throwing from the building, and they duck down, and then they put that little effect beneath it of the Dalek ray is basically burning the wall. That's nicely done. But you're right. I think for me, when we get to it and we talk about the movie version, that gives it more size and what's going on, doesn't it? Because they multiple shots, and there's a big action sequence there, which is great. But I think the fight, what makes me, we'll come on to it in a minute, but I just wanted to say, when the Doctor, Ian, and what's his name? It's not Craddock, is it, in there with him? It's the other guy.
No, it's Jack Craddock, the guy in the cell with him.
Yeah, in the cell. And so the Doctor tells him off for being pessimistic. I love that. That's classic Hartnell.
But I love in that sequence, though. Here's some more educational things. Let's talk magnets, shall we? Magnets, Paul's repel. Let's do that, shall we?
Yeah. Every kid watching knew that poles up, up like poles.
Repel.
Yeah. And also, it's like, to Ian, did you take three-dimensional graph geometry by any chance? And it's like, no, Doctor, only Boyle's law. Well,
let's boil this down now, shall we?
One real quick thing though about the actual attack of the saucer, and I will put this down to, can't fault for ambition, but it's the limits of television at that time.
Yeah.
A widescreen sequence like that, a sequence like that benefits from having like a scope like on a movie, whereas if you have like a wide-ranging attack on a saucer, but you're limited by the fact that you've got to keep all the action within a narrow frame. You've only got like this little area to work with, so you can only see that part of it, but you're trying to cram this epic, sprawling attack on the saucer into a very. So I mean, and that's going to be less than optimal every time.
Yeah, it's hard to do. I mean, his sequence in the chase with the mechanoid and Dalek battle is brilliant. That works really well. Whereas if they did it more like that, I know it wasn't done on film, that was done in the studio, so they had more restrictions to deal with. But I do think sometimes it may come down to the director who's leading the show. I think if Douglas Camphor, you look at Dalek Master Plan, that's got a massive ambition in that. And a lot of it really comes off really well because the director is a bit more prepared or more experienced than the one who's...
Well, but with the chase one that you mentioned, though, you have Daleks and you have mechanoids. Here, you have Daleks, you have the Robomen, you have the prisoners, you have the freedom fighters, and it's chaos. And you've got to choreograph all of that chaos. And it's not just, two elements. You have Daleks fighting. So here you've got to be juggling all this thing, and you only have this much space to do it in.
I think the thing is, because they couldn't cut, or it was very expensive to cut, you can understand why that was probably a bit chaotic. But to give them some slack on that, so if we were able to cut shots and edit them together, would have helped.
I will say I love in this story though that during the escape scene, you've got the one-eyed old guy up on the top, and he's just basically decided, I'm not going to bother escaping now. I'm knackered. So he just basically starts ripping out computers.
Was that John, the guy who was up on the little computer or whatever, kind of throwing stuff?
Throwing it down.
Was that John? Who was the Dalek operator? 3 names.
John Scott Martin.
John Scott Martin. Was that John Scott Martin? It looked like him.
I didn't notice, actually, but I need to look again. But Pat Dorman's in there. He's one of the extras in it. He's one of the freedom fighters on the ship.
I was going to say about this as well. When the Doctor's captured after the test, guys, and he's off to be robotized, and they're so kind, they make the decision to take his jacket off before he's going to be robotized. You know, make him comfortable. But what a lovely set as well. What do you guys think? It's
a lovely set. I love the fact that the mechanism looks like the time rotors going up and down like that in the background and all that kind of stuff. I love all that kind of Heath Robinson high-tech Dalek technology. Is really interesting to look at. But what it does make me laugh is Hartnell's protesting of being stripped. Let me go, get your hands off me. Don't touch me. All that kind of stuff.
I actually made a note to say if it was now and he was being stripped,
you'd be loving every minute of it.
You just hear oh, babes.
Oh, honey, help yourself. Honey.
Why do you have to contaminate our lovely reminiscence of a classic story, John, with that?
That's it. You're never going to watch the same again now. It's going to be, oh, babes, honey, I'm here for fun.
We've got that later in the Space Museum when Hartnell's meant to be in a swimming costume. We've got that to look forward to.
You guys, which version did you watch first of all? Was it the movie or was it this?
For me, it was
version?
Because obviously the movies were around like on like afternoon movies or whatever, like in some of the independent stations here, years before I even knew that there was a TV show about Doctor Who. So I think the 2150 AD for me stands up far more than the first one, which is just obviously by necessity studio bound. This can go all over. I think the design of the Dalek ship in the movie is better. We'll get to it later, but I think the whole climax is better.
I watched the movie version first, and the reason being was my mum always said to me that when she was a little girl, her nan took her to watch the movie version of this in the cinema, and she remembers it vividly. So when I was old enough, she basically sat me down and I watched the movie version of it. And,
good on your mum. That's all I can say.
Yeah, and I adore both. But I would say that I think for me, I like the TV series version more purely because of what you said earlier, Paul, about the fact that you've got the menace, the Robo-Men in it, the very zombie-like. I think that works really well. But I'm happy for them
to exist both together because I like both versions of both films and TV versions. Yeah. And there are bits that work better in each case, I think, for me.
Yeah.
But I can speak for me, and I don't want to sound too soppy, but there's nothing better to do on like a rainy Sunday afternoon than make yourself a cup of whatever it is, whether it be like hot chocolate or hot apple cider, whatever your drink of choice is, and sit down and watch the openings of those two movies with the paint swirls. And the first movie is more like da na 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 na, and the second one is all like da,
it's very 60s jazzy,
right at it,
with all the swirls. There's
well, I saw these originally when they first shown on the TV, Doctor the Daleks First, then Dalek Invasion of Earth in the early 70s, and apparently this is my nerdiness coming out here. According to some research I did, it was shown between after the last episode of Time Monster, Doctor Who Daleks was shown.
Okay.
In between that and season 10. So I saw the first movie then, but I have pure nostalgia for these films because I've seen them so many times. And I saw them before any of the black and white TV stuff. So that does kind of, make my opinion a bit biased towards the films. I mean, I've seen them first,
I mean, those two films for me, they're always, ever since I was a kid, they were always Easter movies for me.
Yeah.
I watched them at Easter, and it's like the original Time Machine movie. Yeah. I always watched that New Year's Day because it's New Year's Day, in the film. So it just works perfectly.
I was kind of organizing my shelves this week that I just thrown everything up for the last few months, and I realized I have 3 versions of each movie.
Yeah. I mean, when they came out on the new Blu-ray recently, they were upgraded. I went to see them in the cinema as a double bill.
Oh, great!
What I wouldn't give to do that.
Really good. And my friend of mine's daughter was in watching it as well. We met up, had a wee chat afterwards. But during Doctor and the Daleks, it made me laugh. The bit where they have all the mud and stuff to cover the Daleks' eyes. The one that's a bit suspect is like Chocolate Angel Delight. All I came was my friend's daughter going, "Ew, that's horrible." Ew, like that. It really made me laugh, But
brilliant. And I was going to say as well, we've all talked so far about how ruthless this is, but there's another bit in here as well where the guy's trying to get down the drain and he lets the guy go down first, but then he doesn't make it because they get him, they exterminate him. He's like getting down the drain, which is another great, powerful scene. And I also find as well, it's really, really striking as well when Susan is with David and you're hearing the guy getting exterminated.
That's very powerful.
You killed my brother. You killed my brothers.
And you killed my mother. Yeah, that's very powerful.
And the scream. And it's like, it's really making you think that this is dark stuff,
I still think something that would improve on that. I think it works really well. The Dalek voices in this don't really come off very well, which is a real shame. I know they didn't have the modulation marked or sorted which level it should be set at, but if they were much more, even in the chase, they're a bit more powerful, and it's a real shame they don't have that grittiness that they have later on, because the weak kind of Dalek voices a bit like that. They're not very, they're a bit goons-like a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now I want to ask. I want to just go back. I know we keep coming back to his location filming. Now, for example, the scene of Dortmund's death, I thought was really very well done.
Yeah.
Because the scene where he struggles to stand up and the wheelchair just kind of rolls away behind him. I thought, I don't know if that was accidental or what, but it was
nicely done.
It was very well done.
And I like that, Gary. You're right, because you see it and it's a subtle touch. And I'm not an actor, but Paul, you might be able to refer to this more. But I like the subtle touch of the actor where it's almost like as a last act of defiance, he throws his stick away. As if to say, I'm going to face you on 2 legs.
Surprising to see, him in the foreground, just still lying there in the street. In the next
that's a great shot.
Coming out
in the tank
of and then, but the reason that I brought that up was more as a way to ask the two of you. It felt to me like, it's kind of cool to see, the Daleks on Westminster Bridge, but it always seems like a lot of them are like in long shot or whatever. And do you think that either there should have been more location shots or closer, more establishing location shots where it's more kind of iconic shots instead of like long shots from the ground up to where you see the Daleks crossing the bridge from a lower level quickly. It just seems I'm not trying to find something to run it down with, but it just seems like
I think you're right.
There wasn't like the Cybermen at St. Paul's Cathedral in the Invasion type shots in this one.
It's a real shame because the publicity stuff, there's lots of photographs. I think the original one I first saw was in the Doctor Who Monster book with them on the bridge lined up. And they look great. If they'd taken live action shots of that, it would have really sold it. And it just it doesn't really capture that as much as it should. And
you're right, because what we always like about Doctor Who is the familiar and the terrifying coming together. And I know they probably thought about it and they thought, well, we've got to be sparse with it because we want it to be shown as like a futuristic, we want people to believe it's a future city.
Yeah.
But they could have done some more possibly close-up familiar scenes, which might have worked quite well.
I mean, it's kind of effectively the Dalek Invasion of London, isn't it? To be honest.
It is. And
I assume that all of those things had to be shot like at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning in order to have no people there. So I get it. They're probably limited in terms of the amount,
and they probably run out of time as well.
They can do. Yeah.
And I would also say as well, when you talk about the story being dark and sort of sinister, you have, and it's the second time it's brought up, but it's acted on now, where Dortmund makes the decision because he hears them talking about getting out of London, and he basically he's doing an honourable thing where he's given his scientific data to Barbara without her knowing. He offers it first of all, and she says no, and she's compassionate and says, we'll go together, you can give it to him yourself. But he hands it to her, and he's analysing it in his own head, and he's like, right, okay, I've got to sacrifice myself here because if I go with them, we're not going to get there.
Yeah.
Whereas they've got a chance of getting there. This doctor's a scientist. He can use my data, and he can try and come up with what's going on and find a solution to it. And I do like the fact that Susan and I forget her name, but they're
Jenny.
talking.
Jenny.
Yeah, Jenny. He hears them sort of talking, doesn't he, about how we're gonna. Jenny's very cynical and how we're gonna get them there. And then, like you say, that scene out there is very good, and it's like within a second I chuckle because you've got the Dalek talking to the mannequin.
Yeah.
That
non-cultural.
That's it.
I like that.
Or subcultural. So
that's it. Yeah, that's it. Great. Who are you?
And then it really did look like, the scene when they're escaping on the truck, it really did because they have the scene obviously where Jenny comes open the doors and it's the shot over the dead body of Dortmund, and you can see she's opening it. And it seems like a continuous shot. Like when the truck comes out, it's actually the actress playing Jenny who has to jump up onto the moving truck and get in the truck. I'm sitting there going, surely that's not, they didn't have the actual actor say, okay, so when the truck comes out, you're going to jump onto the landing board, open the door and climb in as it's moving. I thought, I don't, but it seemed like it was really her.
I think it was, yeah.
But this is also
health and safety wasn't quite so strict in those days, Guy.
Again, as we were talking about before, where the Earth has been bombarded and this futuristic Earth has basically been reduced to rubble. So all of your tech, like flying cars or hover cars and all that, it's gone. So you're having to rely on, what they would class as classic vehicles to get you from A to B. And it's very much like, almost like the genesis of the Daleks with the car leads, where you just haven't got the technology. So you have to go back and use older stuff. That's what's happening here.
That's a lovely touch, don't you think? Because it avoids all the flying car nonsense, but also it makes it more realistic, doesn't it?
It does.
I wonder, and you probably wouldn't have had time to do it. And you would have had to have shots that are so quick that people wouldn't know what it was they were seeing. But you could have, we talked before about how the fact that for all intents and purposes, this could have been the same year as transmission, not 200 years out. I wonder if just by strategically putting signs up on buildings, you could have like hover car for sale, something like, signs that let the signs on the abandoned buildings,
like Back to the Future, create the illusion,
illusion that hey, this is 200 years because look, they sell hover cars over there, or they do, maybe a couple, maybe that would have, and it would have been low cost, thing just to create that idea.
And I think, the other thing I would say is I think it's very, very well acted by Hartnell, where the chemicals that they've put into his brain, and he's struggling with it. He's comatose for quite some time because of what they've done to him. That's well acted, and where they're dragging him down.
I had read, and Paul and John, maybe you can say, because I need to investigate this. I was reading something about the story, and they said that in that episode, which I think episode 3 or something, that Hartnell had like a slight fall or whatever, which then had to, which is why then in most of the episode 4, he has to be unconscious because he's up and around and then he faints again inexplicably. And then they give the doctor business of dismantling the firebomb to David, something the doctor probably would have done. And they give him the lines and the business until Hartnell then shows up climbing down the ladder into the sewer in the next episode. So I think they had to really quickly rejig some of the lines and action in the episode to account for Hartnell not being there. So Paul, it sounds like that was the case.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, apparently it was when they came down off the ship. The actor carrying Hartnell slipped and he let him fall, and he suffered some kind of back paralysis for a week or 2. Was off because of that.
Blimey.
Wow.
I mean, I do like as well, and they're wonderful scenes between the Doctor and Susan, where the Doctor is basically saying to her, because she's going on about David, and he's like, I make the decisions here. And then he's basically saying, well, you know, you see, and you seem to be effectively along the lines, you seem to be listening to the advice of this young man more than me. And it's very well done. And then I love it when David comes back and goes, you're the senior leader of the party, sir. What do you recommend? And the doctor says, and the doctor says exactly what she's just suggested and what David suggested. And she's like, she does that face to the camera, and then she's like, and he's going, what did you say? And I think it's a very good idea, grandfather. And she
that really caps it. The fact that Susan is in the foreground and you see her kind of surprised smile about it. That really makes that.
It just works, doesn't it?
Talking about Susan, though, no, we're going to touch on it probably in a minute anyway. But the relationship between him and Hart and David is peppered really nicely through the story. It doesn't happen overnight, so there's a bit of a development of the relationship. Yeah, it's not quite so. Leela and Andred.
Let me ask you guys how many in your rough approximation how many days does this story play out?
Well,
2, 3.
I would say it's a few days. Yeah,
a few days. Yeah.
Getting to Bedminster from there with all of the wreckage and everything's going to take you some time, isn't it? I think I was going to say to you guys as well,
because there was a specific reason why I asked that question now.
It's how quickly do you fall in love with someone's the question.
Yes, to me, I thought this is, you know what I was flashing on? I was flashing on the Love Boat. How you can come on the boat on a Friday,
and
sail down to Mexico,
sail
down to Mexico in 2 days, and then it's like, we'll be back for our honeymoon cruise. And it's like you just met the guy 48 hours ago.
He's a fast worker, obviously, on the Love Boat.
You're leaving they're coming off the Love Boat, and they're carrying the baby. But I was going to say, what I like as well about the Susan and David relationship, I love the talk between them when she's going, oh, you could always come with us. I can ask grandfather. And he's like, no, this is my home. This is my planet. I want to fight for it. And I think she then says that bit about she's never had a place of her own to settle down. And it's just the little tidbits that they're dropping into the story now.
And actually, it's a bit cheesy, but I quite like it, the flirtatiousness with the fish. I quite like that.
All right. Let's. Okay.
Do you not do that when you go on a date?
Let's
no, you don't. I've never tried it myself.
I go into a bar with a wet fish.
I was watching that, and I thought that's why. I thought
it's very Monty Python, that though, isn't it?
See, I was watching this, and when that happened, I thought, I was going, Gary, that's why you're still single.
Yeah.
Because you've never tried that. I've never, tried dangling a wet fish in front of a surprised lady's face before, and then the next thing you know, they're on top of each other. And I thought, see, if I could go back in time, I would just stock up on fish and kind of make that a part of my repertoire.
It's worth trying if you're looking for someone. Yes.
I wonder what David's reaction would have been if, as he held it in front of her, he just decided to eat it feral, just raw in front of him, whether that would put him off.
Or maybe drop it, maybe like dropping it down the back of her blouse would have been like, the clincher.
The unfortunate thing is that they
regeneration.
both now stink of fish, which is not how we should get in my head. Really, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Paul, it seems like it sounds like you. I'm not going to turn around and say I didn't, but it sounds like you thought the way that they developed their relationship was fine.
I think because they knew it was happening, they had chances to place bits of reactions, relationship lines, things like that to develop it. I think it could be developed more, but I think it'd be better as a first leaving of a companion. It wasn't too badly done. It's been done worse since then, obviously, but I think they had more time to develop Susan's character, her relationship with David, and they had little moments that worked quite well. They could have done more, but I think it was a good place to start.
I like as well, the stock footage with, where they're showing the mine work and the drilling. I think that works quite well where they've put that in.
Okay, all right. We have to give our tip of our caps, or tip of my cap, to the great scene. And again, I don't know what you'll say about this, Paul, but the scene where Ian and Larry are watching the scene of all the slaves hauling the car or the cart onto the railroad. What did you think about that scene? Because I thought that was a pretty good scene.
I think it works quite well. I think they've got the intercut with the stock footage and their reactions to it. It works quite well, I think. Considering that, they had not much of a budget to do it, I think they've used the footage quite well,
I also like as well, and this is, you see it a bit more in sort of Troughton's era, but the production team, I love the fact they do things with, like, you see the machine behind them when the Robo Man turns up and it's got Earth movers on.
That's like 60s Batman, I was going to say. Very much labeled everything there.
I think that's great. And again, it shows the ruthlessness.
All right, are we gonna now we have to talk about about
the big fella.
We have to talk about the big fella.
I mean, again, when you talk about the movie version, you talk about this version, I'm surprised they didn't put a sliver in the movie version, because
I wish they had. I really do.
I thought the sliver as a kid creeped me out. And I like the fact that the Daleks keep pets. So they were putting these creatures on planets they captured or colonized.
And they followed that into the Varga plants as well, which was quite nice later on.
Nicely done. And I think I like all of this. And I like the fact that, the Daleks are so clever. They don't necessarily have to waste time on you themselves. They can just get these creatures from other worlds to effectively just pick you off. So it's like, for me, I like it because it's almost like, that classic, the movies or the classic prisons in the US where you can escape the wall, but then there's a river with crocodiles in it. You've got to get past. So it's like, right, okay, you're not going to stop that thing. It's quite resistant to a lot of stuff, but we need to look after them because they are living beings after all.
Right.
I like the sliver. I do like the sliver. I really do. I'm quite fond of it. But there's two incarnations of the sliver. There's part 5 and part 6, I think.
Yeah.
So you've got two versions of the costume. The first bit of the costume still makes me laugh. It looks like Dad on holiday trying to put a tent up in the wind. It's a really, really weird kind of thing, And then the second version's really, really good. It's quite scary with the hands and the throb. And the noises it makes are quite harrowing. If you were a kid, I'd be quite scared. The howling it makes, the sounds it makes.
Howling lion cat.
And I thought it was pretty cool. The whole idea about jumping into the mine, the mine car, and it kind of jumps after him. I thought that was really well done. I kind of wish, though, after it fell, Ian. There would have been a moment where Ian kind of just says, in another time, we could have been friends.
Yeah.
Something like a little epitaph for the Slither.
Like a wedding chapel sliver.
Being married by Elvis or something.
Yeah. I think the sliver is great. I mean, I love, again, talk about universe building and stuff. I love the fact that this is another mutant from Skaro, essentially.
Yeah.
Because they do sets from Skaro, don't they?
Yeah,
Or
it
didn't they
works better. Yeah,
establish?
I think Wells says the Black Dalek, it's its
Yeah.
pet. Or should I call it the Dalek of Chaos, just to keep
Yeah.
it PC,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
I've
Very
done it
good.
again, sorry, but
Yeah.
No, very good. Very good.
You crafty so-and-so. Yeah.
But, you know, and then in the mind scenes, obviously, I thought that I understand that this was not scripted, but it was just a comment when you know Larry meets his brother who's been robotized, and they have that final confrontation, and they both die. I understand that it was the actor who was playing what was his brother's name, who was playing Larry's brother, when he's lying on the ground now, and he just goes, Larry. That wasn't in the script. That was just him, which I think is
fantastic.
Yeah,
absolutely fantastic, because that just adds to the tragedy of the whole thing. That scene wouldn't have been half as powerful without him just extemporaneously saying that word. So bravo to that actor.
The deaths in this are particularly harrowing, really are. The bit even with Ashton, the Black Marketeer, when he gets killed by the Slither, you see the Slither's hand coming in, and they tries to shoot it, and you hear this horrible strangulated sound when he dies as well. So some great deaths in this.
Yeah.
Really,
it really is. And I think it's kind of like they did it with, later on you had the Cybermen, and you know Star Trek had the Borg, and it's that whole taking someone you love and they're still looking familiar, but they're gone. They're the enemy, like Pyramids of Mars. You know, as a classic example.
The thing about this is, this could never be, certainly the story, you can't consider it to be a kid's show, because it is so violent and quite thought-provoking for adults as well. It's not just a kid's show. It really isn't, you know?
Yeah. And it's, I think I'll just want to jump back as well and just say I do love the bit where they're attacked in the sewers, and you got the crocodiles and all of that there.
The tiny baby.
The little week-old crocodile.
Yeah.
The little 4-inch crocodile, you mean, John? That
Prospective crocodiles, I think they're called.
Yeah, and I love it as well, where they're attacked by the Robo-Men, and the doctor's smacking the one on the head with the cane. You know,
what does he say? I don't kill. I don't kill unless my own life is threatened.
Yeah.
It's like, really, doctor? Okay.
Yeah.
Unless it's a caveman and a overseer by the road, etc. Yeah.
And again, I do love the interior of the Dalek saucer. Looks very good, and the command center, you know, for the mine, and that all works very, very well. You know, the Daleks interacting with each other, and you've got that
I did notice
circular screen.
The Daleks on the saucer have their own boom operator standing in the corner.
Yes,
that might be a
right.
a robotized boom operator, perhaps. I don't know. But.
And you know what? The one thing about the doctor, you know, clubbing thing, that the scene they missed, they should have had the doctor after he kind of clubbed the rope man. He should have just said, it's like, oh, I love doing that.
Yeah.
I do enjoy a good clubbing.
I must do this some more.
Good exercise, isn't it, Chatterton?
Yeah. And then, you know, again, the new effects I like, where the Dalek saucer blows up the truck. Yeah. You know, that's well done. It wasn't too bad with the model shots back in the day. Actually, you get that close up, don't you, with the camera, and then suddenly you see
this kind of zoom of the ship.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
I mean, you can't have the perspective shots like in the movie, where you have the long shot of the saucers going over the mountains and the you know, the buildings to kind of orient yourself as to the size of it. Here, it's just got to focus just on the thing floating across the sky. But it's fine. I mean, for what it was fine.
I mean, you can suspend disbelief, and you have to do that, you know. And I think it's not. I love more practical effects than CGI myself, and I love to see how they do that. And it's a historic record of old film and TV, which is fascinating, I think. You know?
Now, as we're kind of slowly circling, you know, toward the climax, I do have to say that something I thought was done well in the initial hints, but came off to me as kind of handled kind of ham-handedly, was the revelation of what the Daleks' true plan was. Now, Larry's
batshit crazy, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, not only that, but you could have sold it if they would have taken if they would have given it the import that it was, even to sell a lunatic idea like that, you have the couple of initial hints of Larry going, oh, I think my older brother mentioned something about it had to do with the magnetic core. Now, you don't need to go into details about how his brother would have theorized that and how he would have then got back to Larry, whatever. It's all about a couple of hints about the magnetic core. You go, huh, okay, magnetic core.
Yeah.
But the revelation of the fact that, which all comes like in a Dalek info dump of, to where the Daleks telling other Daleks something they would have already known. So why are you telling them? Because you're really telling us as viewers. But, the fact that, they're going to dig out the magnetic, which is done far better in the movie because the movie gives it more of the import that when they find out what it is, it's like, oh, no, we're going to dig out the magnetic core. We're going to handle the gravitational and magnetic forces, and we're going to pilot it around. That's almost tossed out in this initial serial as, there's 100 different ways they could have done that where it would have had more pauses, more power, maybe more music, maybe the doctor or whoever finding it out and being the one to any way other than the way they did it, where it's just tossed off and almost lost in the noise in episode 5 of what they're real planning. And I thought that was just really handled badly.
It is a shame because it needs to be reiterated properly. But I think the difference between this and the film as well is the model sequences with Ian sabotaging the bomb and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
They don't come across very well at all, do they?
No.
But I mean, what did you think about? I mean, something so huge, which is why are they here and what do they want? You'd think, though, with some pre-planning, they could have given that moment the import that it needed.
Yeah,
I mean, when the Doctor realizes what's going on and he explains that it'll affect the balance of the constellation, that's quite a nice moment. But again, that's wasted as well, isn't it? They don't have that extra impetus of drama for it, do they? For that moment, when the Doctor realizes what's going on.
I mean, you could have a scenario where you've just got a TARDIS that flies an entire Earth all the way back to its natural place at some point in the future.
Well, I noticed about this. It's almost the same idea that they gave Mestor and his eggs in Twin Dilemma. So that's the same idea, just about, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, or you want like one of the characters to find out, when they're going to hollow out the core and fly the planet around the universe, somebody would go, "You what?"
And the planning.
Excuse me, what?
In the Dalek Council, they're going, "Okay, let's discuss today's business," and then blah blah blah.
It's like my first question would have been like, well, where are they going to put the steering wheel? Then? Where do they install the steering?
You got the Dalek Chancellor going, right, okay, how much is this going to cost?
We'll have to reach Dalek Council tax to make this work.
Exactly.
The Dalek Council, when somebody proposes it, going, okay, do we have a plan B?
Yeah. Why don't we just create a load of ships and just fly it back? No. Got to fly the
bus driver Dalek driving it is quite a great idea. All aboard the Earth, let's go.
Now, okay, but again, like if that's, and you know what, I'm not even. Well, in some way, I'm ridiculing the concept, but it's Doctor Who, so we're used to kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
But in something like this, then it begs the question: well, if that was their plan, why couldn't they do this with any other planet?
Yeah.
Why
did they come all the way from
what was it about the Earth's magnetic core? I mean, why didn't they go like to Venus or Mars or something like that? Hollow out the Mercury
or Marinus or something like that, perhaps.
And I do love, though, for me that concept, and I think it just takes me back to like the TV21 comic strips. Because I always like link to that when I think
with Zeg
growing, and they're growing their empire, that they're going to take stuff to them, and build their empire.
Again, here's the thing, and I know you can't tie all of the franchises together. You're just going by the TV version. But again, you have ships that are capable of intergalactic travel.
Yeah.
Why do you need to pilot a planet around them? How does that give you an advantage that the mobility of your ships and all this doesn't? I mean, again, that's something that maybe like in a Target novel, you could have a couple throw-in lines about it. And maybe you don't need to you're just kind of being carried along when you're watching the TV version. But again, the minute you pause and you go, wait a minute, then it all starts to, unravel. But, as we said, I think the climax was done, better. And, we can talk about the differences in the climax. But the thing about, I thought, for example, the movie version of Bernard Cribbins getting down there and putting the planks to totally cover it, to divert it, is better, because when Ian pushes through, my first thought is, why are all of these big pieces of lumber just standing around in this room? What are they for?
It's not clear, is
this
it,
mining operation?
Yeah.
It's like it's great if you want to sabotage it and put a few of them across the way to kind of block the thing.
It's like
but otherwise, I don't know why they're just standing.
It's like
room.
someone's building a summer house in a mine. you know,
it's like that bit in Tomb of the Cybermen where the Doctor finds the wood to push the door. Where did that come from?
I mean, you want Ian. I mean, it would have been just fine for Ian to over-egg the point and look around and see all the things and just look at the camera and go, "Well, this is lucky.
This is handy." Yeah.
And I think, I do think there's some great stuff of Hartnell again here when they're sitting around like the fire, and you can see that he's really enjoying himself again. And,
his speech about the Daleks conquer the Earth is a lovely speech, isn't it? At that point.
It is absolutely wonderful stuff. And, again, we've talked about it before, but for us going through Doctor Who from beginning to, current era, the Hartnell's era doesn't get enough praise, in my opinion, for just how good it is and how good he is.
Yeah.
He really does sell you it, and that's why it managed to continue, because of the character that he developed. And
he's magnificent at just like when you get rid of all the techno babble, and it's just him conveying like connection, like human connection or honest human emotion or honest Gallifreyan emotion, whatever. Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
The and we're going to get to touch on this now, is the end speech he delivers when he leaves Susan behind is beautiful, really well done. Even the preamble that's not in the Five Doctors,
it's incredible.
It's really well done. But the interesting thing, I don't know if you disagree with this or not, guys, but having seen the Five Doctors pre-title sequence so many times, you think it gives this scene more gravitas and weight or not? Or do you think it would have been equally as important to you as a fan if you hadn't seen the Five Doctors?
I saw the Five Doctors before I saw Dalek Invasion of Earth. Yeah, because at the time I didn't have access to Dalek Invasion of Earth, and the Five Doctors, my parents, sat me down as a tiny nipper, and I watched it. And that first scene, when I first watched it, I didn't know anything about Susan at that point. Mm-hmm. I didn't know the backstory to it. I just thought it was a wonderful speech where he's basically saying, someday I'll come back, as in, he'll come back as that version of the Doctor.
It's kind of works really well because of the context of the Five Doctors, because of the nature of what he's talking about.
Right.
You'd relate to something like David Bradley coming back to be the Doctor kind of idea, sort of thing.
I mean,
whereas it could, taken from the Dalek Invasion of Earth, works well out of context, I think, in the Five Doctors.
And it's like no tears, no anxiety, just go forward in all your beliefs. It's fantastic stuff.
No, I mean, it was basically, perfect synchronicity in that clip works well in isolation.
Yeah.
As we all know, having watched the Five Doctors for the last how many decades.
Yeah.
It's perfect in isolation. It's perfect in isolation as a tribute, whether you think it's Hartnell saying it or whether it's the Doctor saying it. In whatever context, as a piece of isolated clip, it's perfection. I'm sure JNT, probably was just going brilliant, when he saw that, because it works.
Yeah.
Here, I think the whole beginning, I think that the whole sequence, you have to begin outside the ship where the Doctor is talking about, the whole business with the shoe and all of that. And the Doctor knows he's playing it from that moment. I mean, to me, the whole departure sequence begins there outside. It's not just the speech; it begins there outside the ship, all the way to the credits, which is what 6-7 minutes.
Well, even before that, when you get the the hint that the Doctor realizes she's going. But with my line, I can see something's cooking. That really cheeky moment, he gives them a wink. I know something's on there.
And the
you
scene,
can see the building up to that.
Well, but the scene where he kind of gives her the side hug, and he says, "Oh well, you're becoming," it's like he knows clearly that. I mean, I can only imagine, like, when you were, I always do this during these stories as we've been going along. What must it have been like to be watching this for the first time as an audience back then, not knowing what's about to come in 5 minutes? But in retrospect, you can see that the Doctor clearly has kind of already decided this has to happen. He has to find some way to say, goodbye to her without actually saying the words. So he faffs about with the shoe and says, "Oh, I'll go in and repair it. You really are kind of like getting into a lot of trouble these days, aren't you? Because he himself, the character, is dancing around the fact that he knows this is the last time he's going to see her. So, I mean, and the three of us watching it now can read all of that into everything that he's saying to her outside the ship. We're bringing that foreknowledge and watching his doing his business with all of that in mind.
It must have been a massive shock.
If we were in 1964, we would just thought, well, that's the Doctor faffing about and just doing, and they're all going to go off in a couple of minutes. But then, the whole thing about, and I thought that the whole interaction between, Susan and David is fine, even though they've known each other 2 days. The "I love you" thing, that's fine. They sell it to me. That's fine. He goes to the, let's build a home, all of that. But then the whole, it's interesting in retrospect that Barbara and Ian didn't know obviously what was going to happen. They didn't get a chance to say goodbye to her. That's
they know though, because the bit where I love that
leave it to it.
I love that bit when Ian's chatting away.
And she's
oblivious
like,
to the fact.
Let's go.
Come on, leave him to chat.
No, that's perfect. But they did not know they did not know that the Doctor, they were about to leave her behind.
No, but they knew something was happening. They knew something was going on.
They thought it was going to be, let's give a moment so they can make out or whatever before she comes back into the ship. But then the whole
but you're just saying there, like, let's give them a moment before so they can make out. That almost implies that the Doctor's a peeping Tom because he's watching.
I absolutely believe.
Well, he might
know,
but he wasn't there.
No, I believe that. I absolutely believe that they're watching everything that's going on outside, because I think the Doctor needs to. I think the way that I personally read it, I think the Doctor needs to see what they're saying to each other, or more specifically, how Susan is reacting. Because I think that's what I think the Doctor's almost decided when he goes in. But I think until he locks the door, I think he actually is watching them because he wants to see how Susan is reacting. And he uses Susan's reactions outside as, to me, that's what cements it in the Doctor's mind that he's got to do that. If Susan would have been going, "Oh, David, I have to go," or if she would have been less agonized about it, I don't think the Doctor would have done that. I think the Doctor sees how agonized Susan is, and that's what helps him make the final choice to lock the doors and then launch into the speech.
And he's read Carole Ann Ford's contract as well, so he knew what's going on.
Well, don't be too meta. Don't go meta, Paul. We're staying in story here.
Okay.
Can I just say though that we've missed a very, very important thing that we needed to talk about from the story. Attack the Robomen! Attack the Robomen!
Kill the Robo. What is the thing about when they are rushing out of they're all rushing out of the mine carrying the Dalek?
Yeah.
You know what I flashed on? I don't know if you guys are James Bond fans. I know it's the scene in I guess View to a Kill in the mine, when they're all rushing out of the mine.
Getting shot
in View to a Kill to get you. That's what I was kind of thinking.
Yeah.
So John,
in the movie version of that still makes me laugh. Of Dalek Invasion of Earth is when they run out the mine, and I think Bernard Cribbins is running, and he runs into a Dalek and he looks up. And then someone chucks a tarpaulin over the Dalek, then runs off. It's like,
the movie climax to me, where you have all of the gorgeous multicolored dogs getting sucked into Earth by the magnetic forces. To me, obviously, that's more. You can't. I get it. I totally get it. You can't do that on this fast-paced, low, budgeted show. I get it. But, the ship crash in the movie obviously is much more cinematic and much more epic. As they all run up and reunite on the hill, Peter Cushing and all of them, all the main characters are up on the hill. That's another thing we haven't mentioned, is the fact that after the first episode, most of the characters are separated from each other for the bulk of the story. That's an interesting dynamic. They really don't come together until the control room at the end. That's when
it's a great way to split the story strands, isn't it? It works really well.
They've all got their assigned tasks, of what they need to do for the story, which is great.
I have to. The one thing that I knew last night after I watched it, I thought, if you mention anything during the stream tomorrow, you have to mention this. Ian, here's a message to Ian. Ian, you're no longer in charge of finding hiding places, Ian. In the previous story, what do? You hide in the worst place you could, which is the one place that somebody's going to pick up and take away. You're lucky that the guy didn't tuck you under his arm and you ended up, back in, London or whatever, because then you would have been lost forever. Where does he hide here? He hides in the freaking bomb. It's like, Ian, you suck at hiding.
I know.
That was my takeaway from this story.
The other thing that made me laugh, I wonder if George Lucas saw this story, because the bit where Ian hides in the bits like they do in Star Wars, where on the Death Star they hide in where the smuggling bits would go, on the ship. That's very reminiscent of that. So one of George Lucas saw that bit and thought, I might use that in Star Wars because it's very similar, don't you think? I mean, the Daleks don't check their story to see if anyone's in there.
For an intelligent science teacher, he sucks at hiding.
And we don't.
Well, the same with David and Ian and the Doctor. They're hiding underneath behind this branch.
I think.
Bringing the bomb in.
I think.
You mean from when the Roman bring the firebomb?
Yeah.
Oh no, that's not hiding. That's just leaning back a little.
I think you're both being. I think you're both being extremely cruel.
Does leaning back qualify as hiding?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I think you're both being extremely cruel to Ian, because Ian is not a hider. Ian is a combat specialist.
Oh, please.
I'm surprised he didn't turn up like Absalom Dark at some point and cut through Daleks in this story.
There you go.
I'm
going to kill every freaking... I'm going to use the chainsaw. I'm going to kill every freaking Dalek in the galaxy. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, your pecs out, I was going to say, we haven't also talked about the fact that although the Earth has been saved, Bedfordshire is now a volcanic hotbed where it's probably wiped out a vast number of people, but it's okay,
Bedfordshire's the new Pompeii, isn't it?
Now, here's the other thing, and I wonder if it's better because it kind of begs the question. Okay, they've presumably, destroyed the Dalek ship, the Dalek Central Command, but the movie, and again, I'm not, we keep going back to the movie. The movie kind of confined everything to the one area of England, to the one ship. So that in the movie, when the ship crashes against the mountain and blows up, and they destroy the Central Command in the movie, it's like, okay, that's it, they've done it. But here, it's like the Daleks are global. There are Daleks. We've conquered India. Yeah. We've conquered Asia. It's like, okay, so now you've set up this volcano up in England. Aren't there still Daleks all over the world now? Or are we supposed to assume that the Daleks all of a sudden fritz out and everywhere, because it seems like there's still, you really haven't ended the story.
The Daleks elsewhere.
Exactly. The movie kept it contained to where when you blow up what you blow up in the movie, it's done, because you haven't really given the illusion that this is a planet-wide invasion.
Yeah.
Here, it's like you haven't stopped it. You've stopped them here, but the planet's still conquered by Daleks.
And for me, when you're talking about what happens after, you talk about sort of, world building as well. And you thought, well, there's going to be sources in space that potentially would figure out something's gone on, that would attempt to wipe out from space what had happened, a resistance. So there's that. But I will say as well, guys, I do love that scene where the Robo Man is just smashing the frame of the Dalek, and it comes loose around the waist, and you hear that. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, again, here's the thing. Now, poor Dortmund, who may have been smart, but he spends all his time working on failed bombs. Did anybody tell him all you need was a rock? Because if you look at the Roman, he hits the Dalek 3 times with the rock, and it takes the top half of the Dalek off. Yeah. So Dortmund, next time, don't faff about with the bombs. Just get somebody to give you a nice sized rock.
You don't even need a rock. You just need a load of people running in with crowbars going, prizing them open,
Yeah, I mean, by that time in the story, nobody's thinking about Dortmund and his bombs anymore. But it's rocks.
They've forgotten who he was, I think.
Rocks better than bombs.
There's like in the future, there's just like they've turned his wheelchair into a statue, to Dortmund, and they've just placed like a copy of the book with all of his formulas on top of it, as a tribute.
There you go.
That's how I like to think about it.
But back to the ending. Obviously we're just kind of like letting our minds roam and all of that. What do you think was? I mean, back to the fact that nobody could have predicted that last scene was coming. It's like, wait a minute, Susan stayed behind. She's not.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think would have been because this would have been nothing that anybody would have ever assumed. It's like, oh, these are the 4 characters. For the history of the show, it's just going to be this, that, till the end of time, it's going to be the Dr. Barbara, Susan. That's Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And talk about your format change. I mean, what do you think would have gone through people's minds when they thought, wait a minute, he's leaving her behind? I mean, it was a great speech and very emotive, and you cry and all of that, and it's powerful. It's one of Hartnell's, I think, maybe his best moment as the Doctor, 5 Doctors aside. Yeah. Just the power of this sequence is undeniable. But what do you think would have been like if you're sitting there like 2 minutes after as the credits roll and the kids turn around and go, wait, what? I mean, what do you think would have been the reaction there?
I suppose it depends on how fond of Susan you are, doesn't it? I mean, I love Carole Ann Ford. We've discussed her performance all the way through, and she's had a bum deal in terms of the character, but she's always, she acts it well, to be fair. And she's quite good in this story. She's got more to do in this story. But it depends whether or not if you are connected to the character, because she was misserved, wasn't she, in the first year? Yeah.
With Susan, I think you're right. I think people would have been shocked about it, and that would have been the kids talking about that in school on the Monday morning. Susan's gone. What's next? But I do, again, going back to that scene, it's so well directed.
It is.
And it's what I love about it, before you even get to that speech, and you touched upon it a few minutes ago, is just the Doctors by the TARDIS door. You've got Susan over one side and David over the other, and they're looking at each other from a distance. And they start walking closer together, and the Doctor just looks and he sees it, and he's like, he already knows what he's going to do. And it's just fantastic.
I think I almost, I still stick with my almost. I think he kind of thinks that this what might be leading for, but then
But sorry, Paul, you go.
I was going to say he does realize what's going on once Hartnell has managed to remove himself from whatever's tangled around his foot as he tried to get into the TARDIS.
Yeah.
So he's a bit tangled up in something, a bit of the set before he goes to the door.
I do think Susan's last words, I think, and it's very great where she does the whole feeling of, where the box used to be. That's very, I don't know if that was improvised or scripted, but whatever, but it was genius. The fact that she is putting her hands around, the TARDIS, because that makes it real. The fact that it's not there anymore. That kind of is like, pounds it home.
And that lovely shot of the TARDIS keys. It's a shame it's not sharper.
Yeah.
But that lovely shot of leaving it behind is.
I do think Susan's last words though should have been her looking up and going, "What about my shoe?" that would have been kind of a good tap.
I've only got one.
Another thing I wanted to touch on as well is, at the end, you see, just before all that, you see the scene of like the friends all helping move all the rubble away, and they've got the planks across their shoulders like that. If that was me and the doctor said, look, can you help us shift some rubble? You want me to go to London and shift some rubble for you? I haven't eaten in 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm in Bedfordshire.
It's like, okay,
save it, mate. Get your own safety.
It's like, okay, doctor, like Tyler's going, doctor, what can we do for you? Okay, get that plank there, those couple of rocks. Oh, and then that big girder too, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
It's the shot of Wells, the guy from the mine, with the plank. Yeah. And cue the workies. Cue the workies.
Everything goes back to the class, the class order.
Exactly, and it's like, right, we're going to make the most of slave labor before we start putting a proper structure in place again.
Yeah, like the guy from the mine says, "Oh, I'm going to start up a new business, pulling all the dead bodies out of the river." I think that's a cottage industry now. The invasion's over.
Well, Susan's gutted because what David hasn't told her about that, because he comes in one day and he goes, Susan, you thought that fish smelled bad. Wait till we're going to do for what we're going to do for work next. Right. It's going to get a lot smellier. So moving round, what's our ranks out of 10? So Gary, starting with you.
9. I'm always headed to there's no such thing as a perfect story, 10, or maybe close, but this is a true epic, certainly the epic story for this season. The location, all the, as we mentioned before, the grimness, the darkness of the story, all the location filming vault this story into the show itself, not only the story but the show itself into a whole other level in terms of what the show's capable of. Of course, this is a keystone story for, Susan leaving, everything we've been talking about for the last hour and a half about why this story is just, apart from everything that's come before. Absolutely. Yeah. So I go with strong 9.
Yeah. Paul?
I agree with what Gary's saying about it being an epic story. It's iconic. There's some great moments in it, and the location, what it does, open it up to make it look more epic, and that they spent more money on it. But I still think there are elements of this that don't work. And I don't want to be negative. I've seen Richard Martin in interviews and stuff. He's a really fascinating man.
I'm getting a bit tired of your negativity, Paul, quite frankly.
John, clearly, I think it's clear that Richard Martin owes Paul money. I think that's I think that's a factor here that we need to discuss.
I wish some sort of leg breaking fix coming up.
Some of the stuff he does works really well, but some of it doesn't. And I don't think, if this may have been directed by Douglas Camfield, would it be a better or stronger story? That's because if you look at Dalek Master Plan, I think they watched the Daleks much better in that, and they're much more scary in that one. But that's another tale for another day. But I do enjoy this story, and I enjoyed watching it recently. I watched it on iPlayer, and it wasn't too bad quality. But I would give it, I'm not as high as what Gary's given. I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
I'm going 9, purely because this is a favourite of mine. I love every element of it. Well, when I say I love every element of it, I agree with Paul. There are some elements in it that now you probably would chop out. But I just think, again, Hartnell's portrayal in it, the speech he gives at the end, I love the world building with how they talk about the devastation. I just think this is just absolute classic Doctor Who for me. And, I would argue I'm not sure there's been a better Dalek story, in my opinion, just how sinister and how evil they are.
Can I ask you, if you gave it a 9, why would you not give it a 10 if you like it so much?
Because I don't believe in a perfect.
Good question, Paul.
I don't believe anything's ever perfect.
But it doesn't have to be
except
perfect,
for this channel.
If it's perfect to you, the important thing, if you enjoy it so much, you have to justify why you don't.
Thing I love it is it's a 9. It's a 9 for me, and that's high praise from me. But because I
gave Marco Polo a 10, I'm sure I didn't I?
Yeah, you did. But because
Paul,
if there
would have been more Slither scenes, he would have rated it a 10.
I would have done, yeah. So would have you, probably, yes. Yeah, so
well, you know,
I think obviously, you know, as you said, I mean, there are things I think that all of us could easily agree on that would have, you know, kind of benefited, you know, the story, which is like more, you know, more iconic location shots of the Daleks, like on Westminster Bridge, and you know, and those, you know, to where it really, like as you just said, Paul, like just like the Radio Times cover, where it really sells, and it's like iconic in the way that, you know, the Cybermen at St. Paul's would be later. You know, a little bit that where it wouldn't have been so many things in long shot. We could probably come up with, you know, a list of like 10 things that they could have thrown in that would easily instantly make it better.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. The there's a lot of good things in this. I don't think the bad outweighs the good. There's a lot of good things I enjoy in this. There's a lot, like you said, Hartnell's superb in this. It really is.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's it for today, everybody. Please put your thoughts in the comments and what your thoughts are on this classic Doctor Who story. We'll see you in the next one. But I will say before I go and before we go, that you will find on the channel that we've got playlists for classic Doctor Who stories that we've already reviewed for season 1. You know, we've also got movie reviews on the channel as well. So dip in, and you know, it's always great to get your feedback as well. So look forward to seeing you with us next time.
Yeah, and for everybody watching, you know, go forward in all your beliefs. Prove that you know, prove that we're not mistaken in ours.
Yep, and no fish fighting.
Yeah, and we've got to lock the door before you go.
Hey, anybody who's watching, if that fish thing has actually worked for you, please put it in the comments, because I'd like to, along with the details about how, you know, that was your, you know, that fish thing actually worked for you romantically.
And if not, try it and see what happens.
Look, guys, let's picture it properly, right? Yeah. You're out on a date, things aren't going very well. You sat there, she's just about to take a sip out of her glass of wine, and then suddenly you just slide a trout across the table. You know, that's it. You're in.
Or even better, as you're kind of leaning in, you just kind of dangle a fish there, you know, between the two of you, and see if that works.
Just drop a salmon over the shoulder.
Yeah, so everybody try that, and please let us know.
Let us know.
Give us your stories.
That's important. Doctor Who dating techniques never fail, everybody. So update us and let us know.
Yeah, if we were to do a top 10 list of dating techniques I learned from Doctor Who, this is number 1.
Oh, without a doubt. Number 1. Without a doubt. Everything's better with fish.
And making a cup of cocoa is always a good one.
Yeah, as well. That's what we're calling this episode review now. Everything's better with fish.
Everything's better with fish.
But until next time, when we discuss the rescue, have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.